Street races. Another challenge faced by the versatile drivers in the PPG IndyCar World Series. These circuits are unforgiving. No room for error. Mistakes, physical or mental, can be devastating. With no testing time, the drivers have free practice to try and master these concrete canyons. But master they do, turning twisting roadways with their sinister walls into their domain. Avenues that normally bustle with ordinary traffic are turned into battlefields. For a brief time, there are no speed limits, no stoplights, and no rules. These drivers give no quarter to the mean streets or each other. Last week, the Indy cars did battle in downtown Denver, and the toll was high. Concrete prevailed over high-tech machine again and again. The tight course forced drivers to pull their way past each other. Manners were checked at the green flag. But Al Unser Jr., the master of the Mile High City 1 year before, worked his magic again, running away from the field and moving back into the points race. Last year's champion comes here third, still 12 points off the pace. Michael Andretti also turned in a great run in Denver, using all his skills to claw his way back into the points fight. He comes to Vancouver second, with his eyes on the leader. And that man is Bobby Rahal. A failure to finish in Denver dramatically sliced into his lead. But his attitude is good. His mind set on victory in the Molson Indy Vancouver Grand Prix on these tough Canadian streets. ESPN, the world's leader in motorsports coverage, presents Speed World. The Indy cars are ready to go racing in Vancouver, British Columbia, the far western edge of Canada, right on the Pacific, with a magnificent mountain range as a backdrop to this most picturesque city. And the racetrack itself, very close to the downtown, actually circles the Dome Stadium here. Hello and welcome to Canada. I'm Paul Page. And when we last left you in our coverage of the Indy cars here on ESPN, Bobby Rahal had a dominant points lead. Well, that is not true here today. And as a matter of fact, at this point in the season, with only 5 races to go, normally we have a pretty good idea of who the champion may be at the end of the year, and that's not true here today. As a matter of fact, Rahal's closest competitor, Michael Andretti, is only 8 points back. And before this day is over, there are any number of drivers who can not only catch Rahal, but have the possibility of surpassing him in that points fight. So, Derek Daly, I think we're talking some rather desperate race drivers.
Well, desperation is an interesting word to use here. Remember, Michael Andretti has already finished second twice in the point standings to Bobby Rahal. Al Unser Jr., he really hasn't had this season that we expect from a champion. He did win Long Beach, he won last week at Denver, but I think he may be desperate to rescue this subpar season. Bobby Rahal has led the championship all year, but now his position at the top is being threatened. Now remember also, desperation might be a bit too strong a word to use, but this racetrack here does not allow for many mistakes, and these 3 drivers have already crashed here. Al Unser Jr. lightly, Rahal twice, and Michael Andretti has crashed twice here.
Now, this is the last time this season that the Indy cars will race on a temporary street circuit. They're very challenging, and in today's Tips from the Cockpit, Danny Sullivan looks at how to navigate these circuits.
The difference between a street circuit and a road course is, of course, the proximity of the walls. Here you really have to define everything with a concrete wall, and that is your apex both on the inside of the corner and on the outside of the corner, so your setup is very critical. You go to a road course, if you get a little wide or something, you slide it off, maybe you put a wheel in the dirt or something. Here, unfortunately, you slide a little wide and you put a wheel wide, you're going to hit it into the wall. Of course, they're also much narrower than most road courses, so that makes it difficult as well. Then you have the problem with they are public streets, so you have things like manhole covers that they have to weld to the ground. The bumps, the crown in the road makes it a little bit harder because when you come out of a corner, you tend to roll down into the barrier a little bit more. and you have the surface changes because not all the streets are exactly the same. The real difference, as I mentioned earlier, on a street circuit is that the margin for error is very, very small because your inner apex, where you try to clip and make it as tight as you possibly can, is a concrete barrier on the inside. And on the exit, it's the same thing. So to get the maximum amount out of the car, you're talking literally inches on both sides as your margin for error.
So that's part of the challenge that faced these drivers here today. The official ceremonies are all but complete. 22 cars stand ready. And to give the command to start engines, the mayor of Vancouver.
We could not have put on this race here today, and we thank them very much. And certainly there are friends in Victoria who also make a contribution to the success of this event. Thank you to them. And certainly there are the 1,000 or so volunteers who you see around the grounds here today in the green hats and the shirts. And they're here to make sure that your visit to the Molson Indy Vancouver is a positive one and a pleasant one. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce you to His Worship, the Mayor of Vancouver, Mr. Gordon Campbell.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
And with the command of the Chevrolet engine of Michael Andretti. Up and down the line, 22 Indy cars are set and ready to go. The PPG pace cars sitting out in front. And all of the drivers making their final preparations, final considerations before they roll away for 100 laps, 167 miles here at Vancouver. So let's take a look at the starting field. The grid is brought to you by the Sears Die Hard battery, now with more power when you need it most. The first four positions are identical to last week, with Michael Andretti on the pole at a record pace, his sixth pole this year. Bobby Rahal outside. He's still the points leader, but he could lose that lead here. The second row, Al Unser Jr., the defending champion here, and Emerson Fittipaldi, who won this year on the streets of Detroit. In the third row, it's Scott Pruitt, his second best start this year, looking for a lot today. And Arie Luyendyk, who will be driving in his backup car after an accident yesterday. In the fourth row, it's Rick Mears, who is still very much alive in the points fight. And John Andretti, who scored a fifth here last year. In the fifth row, it's Danny Sullivan. He almost won this race a year ago. And Mario Andretti, who is struggling. Not his best start so far this year. In the sixth row, Eddie Cheever. And alongside Eddie Cheever will be Canadian Scott Goodyear, who had the fastest lap in this morning's practice session. In the seventh row, Hiro Matsushita, the Japanese sophomore in the Indy cars. And alongside Hiro, Scott Brayton, who's looking for his first IndyCar win. The eighth row, Willie T. Ribbs, Ted Prappis, and as we look down through the rest of the field, the cars have already begun to roll away. So we are ready to start here at the Molson Indy Vancouver Grand Prix. 22 cars, everyone started with absolutely no problems at all. So the field is set. We're ready to go racing in what should be a most challenging and very decisive afternoon. Cars are set and ready to go in the Molson Indy Vancouver Grand Prix. 22 of them have answered the call to start engines and are on the parade laps. In this morning's practice, there have been some surprises, though. Let's go down to the pits now and begin with Gary Gerald.
Paul, one of the dramatic surprises came here with Scott Goodyear, a Canadian driver. The throngs here in Vancouver are really rapidly behind this man. He had been fast this weekend in practice, which had been dominated by rain. The fact that he was fast in the rain was one thing, but when it was clear this morning in the final practice session, he was fast again. Now, on the downside, he starts in the sixth row. Tough to pass on this circuit, but this crowd and this team is counting on Scott Goodyear for perhaps his best finish of his IndyCar career today in front of the home folks. Now let's go further up pit road. Another story, another surprise. Here's our colleague Jan Beekes.
Thank you, Gary. Another potential spoiler to that front championship battle could be that of Scott Pruitt. He again had a great qualifying performance in the Budweiser True Sports car, but I think in this race, fuel can again be a factor. The Chevrolet teams are very concerned about fuel, and in the case of Scott Goodyear as well as Scott Pruitt, they drive the Judd power plant, which typically doesn't get the fuel economy of the Chevrolet. We'll keep a very close eye on the fuel situation throughout the event here in the pit lane. Paul?
here's the field in single file at this moment. They should come into their familiar rows of 2 just any second now. And as we take a look at the field, we also can consider that since last year in the inaugural event, there have been some changes to the track, Derek.
There have been some changes, particularly down at turns 9 and 10. That used to be a 90-degree right-hand turn. Now it's a long sweeping turn 9 before one of the slowest corners on the racetrack, turn 10. Now that has not really met with the approval of most of the drivers, because what that did, Paul, it actually took away one of the best overtaking maneuvers or possibilities right there. That is now gone, so it makes overtaking here even more difficult. Turn number 5, last year there was a lot of problems there at the chicane. They have in fact opened that up so the driver's line of sight is a lot better through that chicane.
On board with Michael Andretti, the pole sitter. Johnny Rutherford drives the pace car just ahead, and you see a little break up there. That's because they are passing under a tunnel, and there's a better view of it, of course. Our signals from the onboard camera don't go up through that stadium structure that's just above, and the light changes, the nature of the surface changes, especially if there's any rain, but fortunately that's not in the forecast here today. On board with Al Unser Jr. Where will he come out of this fight? It was at this race 1 year ago that he finished winning 4 in a row, which clinched his championship. Scott Goodyear, well, there was a surprise of the morning session, as Gary Gerald told you, and the Canadian crowd here really has him pumped up, being a native Canadian. They expect a lot out of him, and he expects to deliver. Now, there are the rows of 2. Nick Finoro, the official starter for the PPG IndyCar World Series, as they come through that final turn. The pace car is off now. The field under the control of the pole sitter, Michael Andretti. The first turn was as they come to the left. We watch for the green. There it is. And Bobby Rahal jumps Michael Andretti and takes the lead going into the first corner.
What a great start by Rahal. He actually got the couple of inches ahead of Michael before they actually got to the flag, but a great start by Rahal.
There is a question in this race about economizing on fuel. Well, that first couple of corners didn't show any economy, as both Michael Andretti and Rahal began a battle, and now here comes Michael to Rahal's inside and forces his way past. He gets the line going into the quarter. It's Rahal back into second place. Fittipaldi rides in third.
Whoa, we saw there Rahal left the door wide open for Michael to come down the inside. Michael does not need an invitation for longer than a half a second. He sees the opportunity straight down the inside under braking, and now he has the advantage. Now Rahal has lost a tremendous advantage because we said earlier it's extremely difficult to make a pass under racing conditions here.
So Michael Andretti, the pole sitter, is taking the lead back from Rahal as they come onto the pit straight now, completing the first lap. And it will be Michael, chased by Rahal, chased by Fittipaldi, and then Al Unser Jr., and then Arie Luyendyk. 160 miles an hour as they pass through this section. And a matter of fact, that first turn has changed dramatically from last year, where they were quite a bit slower. Now it's a wide open turn. They can see around it, and they have taken advantage of it here. Michael Andretti begins now to pull out just a little bit from Bobby Rahal.
We see some corrections on the in-car camera with Rahal. Remember, for some reason on this racetrack, it takes almost 4 to 6 laps of racing before you can bring these tires up to proper working temperature. So we expect to see these drivers working with that steering wheel, trying to control these cars, particularly we see Rahal again make all those corrections, exiting the corners. The tires take a long time to warm up here.
Michael Andretti, then Rahal, then Fittipaldi, Al Unser Jr., Arie Luyendyk, John Andretti, Scott Pruitt, Rick Mears, Mario Andretti, and Danny Sullivan round out the top 10.
And Al Jr., we saw him try to sneak down. Yes, he did get by Fittipaldi. Al Jr., typical gutsy move early in the race in a street circuit particularly, slide down the inside of Fittipaldi.
Al Unser Jr. moves up a position, dropping Fittipaldi back. The battle continues right at the front of the field, but they are all still running very close together, which is in some way a testimony to this circuit. It's very tight. Michael Andretti said it's impossible to pass on, though in the first lap he was able to disprove that. But it will mean that you have to take your chances just any opportunity you have. You really can't wait.
You really cannot wait. Look at Al Jr. slide. We mentioned those tires a bit cool, but now look at Luyendyk. He's beginning to challenge Fittipaldi.
Fittipaldi very definitely under challenge by Luyendyk. Then you saw a bit of an interval back to John Andretti, who runs in 6th place here. Now let's talk about this problem of fuel, because once again, in the Indy cars, they limit the amount of fuel. They're looking for 1.9 miles per gallon. Here they have 97.9 gallons available to them. And all of the teams in this morning's practice session, which is a new thing this year with the Indy cars, where they are actually practicing the morning of the race, found that fuel was going to be very close indeed, if indeed they had enough.
That gave the teams a choice. Remember, one way to save fuel is to run less downforce, because less downforce is less drag. And some of the teams have gone for this option. Michael Andretti runs high downforce. Look at Al Unser Jr. close right up behind Ray Hall.
The view back from Ray Hall, yes.
The view back from Ray Hall's car, whereas Bobby Rahal has run a smaller rear wing, therefore giving him more fuel economy. We're going to have to watch as the race progresses as to who has made the correct decision. But I think Michael Andretti is now trying to control the race rather than run away with it.
So you saw a spectacular view back from the rear of Bobby Rahal's car. Here it is again, as he is being chased by his own teammate, Al Unser Jr. I'm not so sure in the pits they're satisfied with seeing this particular situation, because they saw it earlier on during the practice for this race. Rahal just barely clipped a wall, and in doing so, spun to a stop, and then little Al plowed right into him. Not a lot of damage on either car, but just the kind of irritating thing, the desperate sort of thing that you mentioned at the start.
That's right. We mentioned that both of these drivers did crash. What we didn't mention was they crashed into each other. And believe me, on the Diamond Vision, which is the huge TV screens they have here by the side of the racetrack, when everybody saw that, they got a bit of a kick out of it. But in fact, it was Al Unser Jr. did not see the yellow flag quick enough, or it did not come out quick enough. Here we have, we're on board. Oh, look how close Al Jr. gets. We're on board with Rahal, looking from behind his gearbox.
That particular onboard camera, looking back from Rahal, gives you a great opportunity to see especially some of the compression that occurs under braking. Well, Michael Andretti, the pole sitter, has the lead here. Rahal and Unser are both chasing very closely, followed by Fittipaldi and Lyondike. Well, at the start of the show, we mentioned Scott Pruitt, and right now he has closed up and begun to do battle with John Andretti. It's a fight for 6th place. Mario Andretti is right there behind the 11 car of Scott Pruitt and doing battle as well. You just saw Arie Luyendyk move through the screen, and then the yellow car, the Pennzoil machine of John Andretti. That's the interval from 5th place back to 6th. So still much of the front of the field is still, for the most part, in contact with the leader.
We should mention the reason Mario is so far behind here, because he started the race in 10th position. Right on the first day, he had an electrical problem, which made him very slow. Look at this. He looks down the inside of Scott Pruitt here. But he was slow on the first day. That put him in the slower qualifying session on the second day, and the track was not as fast as it was for the faster boys. So that's why Mario is starting so far back. We do expect him to make a strong challenge.
Scott Pruitt in that True Sports All-American car. That's Steve Horn and the rest of the team trying desperately to prove that there is the kind of technology available to racing in the United States that there is in the UK, by building what is really a magnificent car. It in fact won the award for the year for best design for the Society of Automotive Engineers, and they are trying to do whatever they can with it. It seems to be a bit down on power, though. You're on board the 2nd place car. The Quaker State onboard camera watching over Bobby Rahal's shoulder, and just ahead, that's Michael Andretti, the leader of the race. Remember, Rahal got the jump on the start, but then on the very same lap, the first lap of the run, Michael Andretti came back around Rahal, and what we are looking here is a microcosm of the battle for the championship itself. These two men, 1st and 2nd in the points. For the moment, Michael Andretti out in front, and that will help his point position tremendously.
It really will, and what it allows him to do is control the pace of this race, because even though Rahal, we see him close right up under braking, it's extremely difficult to find enough room to slide down the inside of somebody. Heavy braking here. This is one of the slowest corners on the racetrack. 2nd gear, 40 miles an hour, and then full acceleration along by the front pit straight. Look how Michael got slowed down here.
Now they had another car sitting just there. That was Tony Bettenhausen, who was ahead of them, so already they're overhauling the back of the field.
Oh, and see what he did. He knew he was slowed down by Bettenhausen, so he moved into the middle of the road, so Rahal had no option but to try and go around the outside if he was to make a pass, and of course he knows that's virtually impossible.
And that is the kind of savvy move on this rather tight course, one that is very difficult on which to pass, that you're going to have to be able to pull if in fact you're going to be successful at all. There you saw a good example of Rahal actually let out a little distance and paced himself into that slower car.
Whoa, and we saw them pass that slower car again. Now the biggest problem when one car goes through is the slower car that's being lapped thinks, well, now I can move back online. It's very, very difficult to see that 2nd car, and in this case it was Rahal, but Rahal did manage to squeeze through. Boy, they're into lap traffic so early here, Paul.
Very quickly on, as we only have 8 laps complete of the 100 lap scheduled distance here. This is Michael Andretti on board, the leader of the race. Watch, though, how much he gets thrown around in the cockpit. A very bumpy surface here.
Look at that visor. It looks as if he has, in fact, 2 visors. One is dark and one is clear. In fact, that's the tear-off or the rip-off, because whenever he gets enough oil or dirt or he can't see on his windshield, he just rips that off, gives him a complete new clear vision, and away he goes again.
Michael Andretti has the lead here. For further information on Michael, let's go down to Jan Vikas.
Thank you, Paul. Derek Daly hit it right on the nose when he said that Michael's controlling the race. That is, he's driving just as hard as he needs to, looking very much after the fuel right now, assuming there's not going to be any yellows throughout the event. In other words, short shifting, keeping it down, saving fuel. If there is some kind of caution period throughout the event, then you'll see him really stand on it, because he knows he won't have a problem with fuel. And down here right now, they're very happy, saying he's doing just what he should.
Well, Bobby Rahal continues to chase Michael Andretti. Hiro Matsushita spun in the chicane and had to come into the pits. They've been working on his car for some time. By the way,
Who's that, Paul?
Matsushita. And I know, and we've heard about it, there is his car there as they continue to work on it, the Dick Simon team.
Not Matsushita.
No, and we've heard from folks. They said, wait a minute, that's not the way the family pronounces it, but that is the way in the United States Hiro wants it pronounced.
Matsushita.
So it's his name, Derek. I'm going with it.
It took me half the season to get his teammate Herc's Celanese name properly. Now we have to change his teammate's name, Matsushita. However, he is in the pit, so we may not get to talk much about him for the rest of the race here.
Section of the track under the Dome Stadium here in Vancouver. As they come back out into the sunlight, it is still Michael Andretti, now with almost a 2-second lead over the second-place car of Bobby Rahal. Alonso Jr. runs in third, just 2 seconds back from that. Fittipaldi has opted for a little less torrid pace for the moment, and that may be critical in this run, as Fittipaldi runs in 4th place. Ari Leyendyk is 5th. John Andretti is 6th. Mario Andretti from 10th now up to 7th place. Scott Pruitt in 8th. Rick Mears is in 9th, and Danny Sullivan is 10th.
That's turn 1 they just went through there, 155 miles an hour. This is the fastest part of the racetrack here, 175 miles an hour, and also the bumpiest part. Now, this is where Michael crashed in practice. He turned in, hit that wall right there, spun the back of the car, and then went straight in with the nose cone. He drove the car back to the pits. They fixed it, believe it or not, sent him back out, and he set the fastest time in qualifying. A great effort and a spectacular effort by Michael.
Working through some slower traffic now is John Andretti trying to hold off a most determined Mario Andretti, who is trying to struggle back from a terrible start. 10th place, terrible by his own standards. Mario Andretti, not at any time this year, has been that far down in the order. And now he's climbing all over the back end of
Jeff Wood.
His young nephew, John.
Who's
Jeff
climbing
Wood
over
there.
for Jeff Wood. Now, Jeff Wood needs to move over and let these cars through. Now, Mario gets caught. Look, Mario caught behind Jeff Wood. Loses what? So, 10 car lengths to John Andretti.
And that, as you mentioned, Derek Daly, is where one has to be careful. Mario has to make sure that Jeff knows he's there. He darted out and gave him a pretty good view in the rearview mirrors. And there you see Jeff, in fact, saw him, pulls to the outside of the line and lets Mario come on through to conclude his ongoing battle, to continue that ongoing battle that he has with the younger Andretti. So Michael Andretti has the lead of it. Bobby Rahal is still chasing. Al Unser Jr. continues his run in 3rd place. Back on board, Al Unser Jr., 3rd place car here at Vancouver as the PPG IndyCar World Series continues. And it is a fight for points here, a desperate fight for points. We have just 5 races, counting this one, left to go in the season, and still there is no decisive leader in the fight for the championship. One would have thought that Bobby Rahal had that position, but then he was closed upon in the race a week ago in Denver, and so now it seems to be anybody's game. The best player at the moment is the leader of the race, Michael Andretti. Bobby Rahal runs in 2nd. You're on board the Quaker State onboard camera with the 3rd place car, and that's Al Unser Jr.
Great pictures here from inside Al Jr.'s car. This is the 1st gear hairpin. This is going to go to the gearbox 2nd and 3rd. Now, this is the chicane that they opened up last year. See the way they've moved that wall back? Now the driver can actually see around that corner.
Fighting back in the field as we watch Eddie Cheever and Danny Sullivan. They fight for 10th place right now. Rick Mears has been in that battle but pulls a little bit away. Cheever with Sullivan, Alpha Power right behind him. And there are a couple of the teams this year that we'll be talking about throughout the telecast here today that have a great deal to think about what they may do leading to next year.
Well, I have never heard so many rumors as we've heard this week.
Oh, one car against the wall.
Willie T. Ribbs Ribs makes hard contact with the wall. The wing, looking it up on the right-hand side, smashed off that car. Heavy damage to that rear suspension, the right rear suspension. So this will bring out a full course yellow.
Most precarious position, too. As you can see, most of the guys coming off the corner. And Ray
Oh, did you see Rahal? Boy, did he arrive there out of control. Got on the brakes, locks up those rears. This is a very, very dangerous situation here.
So we're under full course yellow now, just as Derek Daly predicted. And what a terrible disappointment that's going to be, not only for Willie, but also for Derek Walker, the owner of this team, who has been doing a stupendous job in keeping the team alive this year against all odds. Is hoping for something really good next year, but as yet they haven't seen it. Saw Willie T. Ribs climb out of the car. He is not injured. And here is a replay, Derek.
Okay, we pick up the replay. Willie's already lost control of the car, but look, oh, he goes in frontwards also. Heavy damage to the rear, then he goes straight in. I'm afraid we have heavy damage to that car. Derek Walker, look at the fluid coming out of the back of that car also. Look at the marshals are trying to clean up the debris, but Willie T in major league trouble.
One car in, and it is Michael Andretti. Here's Gary.
Bobby Rahal and his teammate Al Unser Jr. both taking advantage of this early opportunity to come to the pits. We see Ari Luyendyk further behind them. They get gas or fuel, and now Rahal engages the clutch. He gets away. Still waiting for Jr. to roll out. Now he goes away.
Michael Andretti was stuttering away from that stop. He still is. They have trouble getting the car started. Finally, he lights up. Almost gets sandwiched by Rick Mears. His dad and Scott Pruitt, all of them right together there in the same pace of ground at the same time. But fortunately, no contact. They're all back into the fight.
Well, we talk about the pits being the hairy, scary time. This is exactly what we've seen. Michael stalls the engine, has a lot to do to try and get it underway, and has definitely cost him dearly because his hard-earned lead for sure is now gone, because I'm sure you'll see Rahal and Al Jr. as the head of the pack when we come back and get our scoring sorted out here.
Trying to get control of the field. A couple of the cars opted to go not to the right of Willie T's disabled car, but to the left. And in doing so, now that we've seen a replay of the accident, they will have driven across a great amount of debris, and that may affect the outcome of this race as well. Let's go back to the pits and Gary Gerald.
Oh, this has suddenly become a very tactical race, because as we checked, I think it was lap 15 when the yellow came out. That was the earliest window that the teams that we had talked to said that they would pit under yellow. Now, if you can get 40 or 42 laps under normal conditions, that's not going to get you to the end of the race. I'm saying that they can make one more stop. They would have to have another stop. These teams think that there'll be more yellows during the course of the competition, but this whole fuel strategy now becomes a major play in the race, because whether or not you have enough fuel to go the distance is certainly one of the big keys that Jan touched on early. Let's go up to the other end of pit road, and Jan.
Thank you, Gary. Here in the John Andretti pit, he has also just come in. No chassis adjustments on that car. They had a conservative strategy, and they told me earlier they didn't think Michael could make it at that pace. Well, with the yellow flag now, everything's out the window.
Most of the key players have made pit stops. Absent in the pits, though, are Danny Sullivan and Scott Goodyear, who have elected not to make a stop. So we are under a full course yellow, and the reason for it, an accident involving Willie T. But take a look at how some of the cars, most notably Al Unser Jr., found a route through.
Oh, look at Junior's right front wheel locked up under heavy braking. Realizes there's no way I can make it around the right side of Willie T. And luckily, he had enough time to make a change of decision there. He's just was able to sneak down the inside. Look at Willie T having a look, dejected totally on the right side of your screen there, looking over the fence.
So Bobby Rahal leads it under a full course yellow. Al Unser Jr. is second, while they still clean up from Willie T. Ribs' accident. Looking back from the leader of the race, now Bobby Rahal with 21 laps complete. Rahal begins to pick the pace up as he heads for the final corner before the pit straight. And what should be a green flag. That is Jeff Andretti, the number 86 Texaco car, just behind him. And then Al Unser Jr. Little Al looks to the inside as the green flag comes out and passes Jeff Andretti down to the inside, being chased very closely by Fittipaldi, who lined up in third place coming back to the green. But Rahal got a definite advantage on that restart.
Boy, just look at the jump Rahal gone. You cannot even see him from inside Al Jr.'s car. I think what happened there is Jeff Andretti, I think, moved to the left-hand side, but didn't realize that Al Jr. was already going to go round the left-hand side, and that slowed Al Jr. up.
Now Michael Andretti has to deal with his own brother Jeff, off as he tries to get around through some tight sections of the course. And here is a kart official and Al Unser Jr.'s team awaiting his arrival, because as we suggested, they should be giving him the black flag and bring him in for a stop and go. So they watch as we ride with Al Unser Jr., who works his way on the backside of the course. He's had one piece of bad luck on that restart, and now apparently will face yet another one. Bobby Rahal was the leader across the line. He's got about a 2.5-second lead over the second-place car right now as Al Unser Jr. on the pit road.
Here he is, full speed down the pit road. All he's got to do is come to a standstill and immediately go again. So watch what happens here. Look, stand still and go, come on, get out of there.
The good news is at least his tires are a little bit hot and he can go through this corner fairly quickly. The rest of the field, there you see John Andretti stringing past in this Quaker State onboard camera. Behind John Andretti, of course, that was Scott Pruitt. And it looks like Al Unser Jr. is going to slide in about 8th, 9th, maybe 10th place, just ahead of Mario Andretti.
Look how close that wall is as they come through this chicane. The outside wheels just about clip that wall. We see someone get sideways like Lyondike there. But my word, you have inches to spare, that's all. Look at Michael Andretti trying to get by Scott Goodyear here.
Lyondike was running in 4th place. There he is. Then Danny Sullivan is 5th. Then Scott Goodyear. And now Michael on board, the Quaker State onboard camera. As two cars together. You mentioned this was a bad corner. Boy, there's evidence of it.
Jeff Andretti, and that's one of the Euro Motorsports cars. That's our new driver, Marozzo, involved in an incident here.
Here's what happened. There's Jeff Andretti in that black number 86 car.
Oh, it's Jeff Wood. It's Jeff Wood goes down the inside. Doesn't make it. Jeff Andretti doesn't see him. Loses it. Does he hit the wall? No, he doesn't hit the wall with the front of the car.
So Jeff Andretti should be able to restart again.
I'm surprised Jeff Wood's even out there. He didn't do any practice. He just ran this morning, and he was only going to do a couple of laps to pick up the starting money. I'm surprised he's even out there.
What kind of tactic was being played there? Here's a fellow who didn't qualify, and yet he starts.
I have no idea what he was trying to do there. I mean, I'm sure Jeff Andretti had no idea he was even going to try and attempt something like that. But look what happens here now. Both cars damaged, both cars in the wall.
Yellows for the moment only stand in that section of the course, so it's a condition yellow only in that area. We're racing on the rest of the track.
Okay, Michael displaces Scott Goodyear very, very quickly, and Danny Sullivan picks up 2 positions on 1 lap, something that's very difficult to do. But now he chases Emerson.
That will put Michael Andretti in 3rd place and not that far back from Emerson Fittipaldi. You see the interval there as Fittipaldi comes across. Michael Andretti just hit the line behind Fittipaldi. Now you're on board with Michael Andretti.
Great pictures here. 175 miles an hour. Look at those bumps over the manhole covers here. Long braking into this first gear. Yes, 175 miles an hour down to 30 miles an hour first gear. That's where Michael crashed in practice. Up through the gearbox. Now this is the chicane they opened up. Now watch the driver's right the way he can see through. See there? Right through. He can see the next corner. That's one of the things they've changed on the racetrack this year.
You know, you mentioned the manhole cover is one of the interesting comments from the corner workers here. And here, as with every track, you can't run a race like this without the help of literally hundreds of volunteer corner workers. They've had so much rain here, record rains. In fact, some of the roads north of Vancouver are closed. There's Jeff Andretti back in the action, trying to play catch-up. That some of the storm sewer systems are so full of water, they were worried about the storm sewer covers, the manholes being pushed up into the way of the drivers. They've taken precautions, but it was a concern.
It was a concern. One of the precautions they take, of course, they literally weld down all these manhole covers.
Let's go down to Ari Lyondike's pit. Here's Gary Gerald.
Paul, Ari just came coasting in here. Engine shut down. Crew pounced on the back of the car. They're working down around where you change the gearbox. We can't get a good look at what they're doing underneath the rear wing, but obviously serious difficulties. I don't know if he got stuck in a gear or what's happened. They've now engaged the fueling hoses, but they have yet to fire the engine. Ari Lyondike, who got only a half a lap in here last year in the first race at Victoria, or here at Vancouver, I should say, having problems early in this competition.
Well, they're now beginning to pull the rear wing off. They hooked the fuel hoses. That's just to make sure that the car is going to be full when it leaves, no matter any time the car comes in the pits, Derek.
That's right. But anytime a car comes in the pits with the engine dead, it's a bad sign. That's going to be a long, lengthy pit stop for Ari Lyondike.
Back at the front of the order, it's this man, the Craco STP car. That is Bobby Rahal. In 2nd place is Fittipaldi. There you see him come through. And Michael Andretti runs in 3rd place. In 4th place is Danny Sullivan. Scott Goodyear is 5th. As as Fittipaldi cycles down inside of Tony Bentonhausen. The report now is that is, in fact, a gearbox problem on the Lyondike car, so that will be a lengthy repair.
Back inside with Michael Andretti. That's Emerson Fittipaldi. Just slices through the chicane just ahead of him. So let's follow Michael Andretti for a little bit here just to see how he closes up under Emerson. Out under the tunnel. Under braking, I think, is where you'll see Michael close up. Look, he's about 2 car lengths closer here. Now, this is the long turn 8 and turn 9 section. This is 160 miles an hour they reach here before they go under very heavy braking for the pit entrance on the last turn, which is turn 10. Now look how close he is to Emerson.
Michael Andretti right on top of second place Emerson Fittipaldi. The fight in full swing. That's the Dome Stadium. This track runs right around it as they head down through the first corner.
Oh, look at this. He catches up. This is 170 miles an hour. Emerson makes him go around the outside. Can he get under braking? No, he can't. But look how much Michael caught Emerson on that front straight.
And what appeared to be a surge by Emerson there is really Emerson forcing Michael to have to get on the brakes and slow down. But the fight continues.
Oh, this is a great view. Exactly. Now, Michael is trying to make his mind up. How will I get by Emerson? What Emerson has to do is how can I block Michael? I've got to take a middle-of-the-road line sometimes, because if I leave the door open, for sure, he will come through. Now Michael is all over Emerson again.
Fight continues. Michael Andretti right on top of Fittipaldi. Jan Beekes, you have an update.
That's right, Paul. When you're watching Michael Andretti and how aggressive he is, the reason that he's so aggressive is they had that window of fuel. In other words, 4 or 5 laps. They got 4 to 5 miles per gallon, which is just enough to give him the fuel to really use all the revs. He doesn't have to short shift. Look for Michael to be very aggressive. They're not concerned right now about fuel at this stage.
Okay, this is turn 1 again. This is where he catches him. Look at this, right up behind. Now, this is a long, long run. Emerson will probably stay to the right-hand side. Look, he does. He makes Michael go around the outside again. See how difficult it is to pass here? Look, there's no room. He can't do it, even though he's faster.
Michael looking for every opportunity, but he still can't get past Fittipaldi. And you saw at the top corners of Fittipaldi's wing a little flash of vapor. That's the vortice with a high humidity here in the Vancouver area suddenly becoming visible. I mean, it's literally a contrail.
That's right. This is the battle of the race right here. Emerson has his hands full because he cannot give Michael an inch of room because Michael will take it.
Before the race, Michael Andretti said he was worried about this circuit because, in his own words, it is impossible to pass here. And now you see what he was concerned about.
Oh, he moves up the brakes trying to get on inside Emerson. But notice the line Emerson takes. He takes a very tight line that makes Michael go down the outside. And we saw there, the outside, there was not enough room. 160 miles an hour almost through this turn, turn 1. 175 miles an hour down here. Very, very bumpy.
Of course, Fittipaldi, with his championships in Formula One as well as here in the Indy cars, is an absolute master on this kind of circuit. And being rather subtle, sometimes not so subtle, he does everything he can to make it more difficult for Michael Andretti to get past.
Oh, we have traffic coming up. That's Hiro Matsushita. He was in the pits earlier on, had a long stop. He is back out. Now, traffic may play a major role here.
So as they close on traffic, this could be a critical section of the race. Michael Andretti is right there. If Michael is to get past Emerson Fittipaldi and pick up second place and continue his chase of Bobby Rahal, the current leader.
Watch this, Paul. He's right behind him again. But look again, Emerson goes down the inside to block Michael.
Michael comes right down the inside, almost gets into the back end of Fittipaldi's car as he is slowed up by Matsushita just ahead of him. Now they come to the first turn. This will be a dice because both cars have to use the slower traffic ahead.
Emerson is slowed down. Here's the run Michael needs. Look at this. He's right behind him, trying to go down the outside.
Michael Andretti tries his move. Fittipaldi places right center of the track and keeps Michael from making the pass. But Michael tries to the outside. But at the same time, Matsushita moves to the outside. He blocks Michael, not intentionally, but he's there. Now they're both around Matsushita.
This is it. I don't think, in fairness to Matsushita, I don't think he saw Michael. There really wasn't enough room there. But
no, didn't have the slightest idea.
Look at the action we have here.
So Fittipaldi and Michael Andretti continue their battle. 31 laps are complete. Bobby Rahal leads, then Fittipaldi, then Michael, then Danny Sullivan is fourth, but Sullivan has not yet made his first pit stop. Now they move inside Ted Prappus. Prappus very wisely gives these two combatants a very wide line. Fittipaldi now with Michael trying. Michael's alongside. And Michael gets him. Michael gets him going into turn 10. Now they come on the pit straight, but this fight's not over. Though Michael is a little bit faster, Fittipaldi will hang there, considering that just ahead of him is John Jones and other cars that might figure into the play.
Michael went round the outside position. Now he chases Rahal.
Boy, there's one of the great fights of the year as you see how slow they have to navigate these corners here in Vancouver. Bobby Rahal, with that fight, now has a 7-second advantage over Michael Andretti. Riding with Al Unser Jr., the Quaker State onboard camera just ahead of him. That is Danny Sullivan. This is a battle for 4th place, and it's a critical battle in this fight because Al Unser Jr., remember, was penalized with a stop-and-go penalty, and since coming out in about 10th place, has managed to work his way up through the field while we were watching that man, Michael Andretti, battle with Emerson Fittipaldi. Now, Fittipaldi tried his best to hold off Michael, but Michael finally persevered.
Now look what he does here. Fittipaldi's on the inside. He makes Michael go down the outside, and incredibly, Michael actually pulls the move off.
That's one of the areas of the course that is new this year, and was one of the things that they were concerned about was whether or not they could pass there. Well, Michael has proven, in fact, that they can. Now, there's your Pioneer race recap to this point in the race. Remember, the distance is 100 laps, 167 miles, and Bobby Rahal, the points leader, is in a great position. In the meantime, Al Unser Jr. is doing all he can to get around Danny Sullivan in the Alpha-powered car. But Sullivan is holding on pretty well. Remember, he has a couple of years in Formula One as well. So Al Unser Jr. trying desperately to catch up here. Now, little Al right there behind the Alpha Power Patrick racing car. Patrick stable, by the way, this year is not really sure of what they're going to do next year. Ari Luyendyk is out of the fight. Let's go to Gary Gerald.
Well, Paul, here's the culprit for Ari Luyendyk. It's a piece of the shifting mechanism back under the wing that goes into the gearbox. It's supposed to be an extended piece here. It broke off. Ari, this is great disappointment. They made a repair, got you restarted and out for just one lap. Then what happened?
Well, basically the same thing was still broken. They couldn't really get it fixed. But it's a shame now that in the last 4 road courses we've run, you know, pretty decent and had to go out of the race. It's no fun.
And after the incident that you had yesterday, having to go to the backup car and there was damage to it, a particularly tough weekend.
Well, that wasn't a good moment, of course, but the backup car was technically very sound. The cars are equal. But I had a little bit of trouble with the gearbox this morning already, so...
All right, thank you, Ari. We've got to get back up to the booth. Paul?
Al Unser Jr. continues to work on Danny Sullivan. You got a glimpse for a moment of Emerson Fittipaldi, who came into the pits minus the nose wings on his car. So the Penske crew going to work on that car now, trying to get Fittipaldi back into the fight. But that will take a great deal of time to get it accomplished. A few minutes, actually. A lot faster you can get your wings changed at your local garage. But an eternity in racing terms. Al Unser Jr. continues to chase, now the 3rd place, Danny Sullivan.
And this is almost the same fight we saw Michael have with Emerson. Al Jr. following and chasing Danny Sullivan, but just not quite able to find enough room as we saw earlier on. But look, he does catch that Alfa Romeo down this long back stretch, but under heavy braking, look at the lap traffic. Sullivan moves down to the inside. Al Jr. hopes to follow him through. Yes, they do pass the back markers, but Al Jr. exactly the same problem as Michael had. But boy, it'll be interesting to see how he deals with it.
So let's ride and listen with this battle. Danny Sullivan out in front. Chevrolet Power, Alpha Power, as they come back under the stadium once again. Emerson Fittipaldi is out of the pits, came out in 12th place, but he's going to go further back because apparently he too went over some equipment on the way out, according to kart officials, and they're going to bring Fittipaldi back in for a stop-and-go penalty as well. Bobby Rahal is still the leader. Michael Andretti 2nd. That's the 4th place car. The 3rd place car, Danny Sullivan just ahead. You ride with the Quaker State onboard camera with Al Unser Jr. He is 4th right now, and just behind him is the young Canadian Scott Goodyear, who has had a spectacular weekend in front of this Canadian crowd.
He really has. Scott Goodyear hanging on well to this battle with Al Unser Jr. and Danny Sullivan here. We have good in-car cameras too, and we're here. In fact, we're on board here with Scott Goodyear. Has a bird's eye view of what Al Jr. is going to try and do to Danny Sullivan, because I think if Al Jr. goes by, I think Scott Goodyear can probably catch and maybe learn some lessons as to where Sullivan may be slower or may be weaker.
Derek, you as a driver, do you in fact do that? Get behind a battle like this this and study what they're doing so that you know what you can move on?
Oh, absolutely. Your mind almost becomes like a computer. You take in all the information, you process it immediately because you may have to use it in a split second. So if he can see where Sullivan is at his weakest, that's the position that he will try and make the pass also. Look at Al Jr. up under Danny Sullivan's rear wing under heavy braking here. This is the last turn, turn 10. This is the front straight in front of his pits.
Al Unser Jr., his 136th IndyCar start through the first turn. And there is Scott Goodyear as he comes in for a pit stop. This is his first of the day.
Yeah, he didn't take advantage of those yellow flag pit stops earlier, Paul, which now puts him out of sync.
The stop and go for Emerson Fittipaldi as the officials wave him in and then instantly back out. He moves around Scott Goodyear as they fire Goodyear back into the action. Let's go down to the pits. Here's Gary Gerald.
Just a quick recap on Scott Goodyear, Paul. It was close to 17 seconds. A lot of fluid from one of those overflows at the back coming down onto the track. Not a lot of fluid, but some that caused some quick concern, a quick eyeball. No major problems. Goodyear and Fittipaldi with a stop and go now both back on course.
Yeah, but Derek, any fluid at all at the overflows is of concern.
Well, it could be of concern, but when you actually stop in the pits and let the engine idle a little bit, they actually can pressurize that water system and dump out some excess water. Sometimes, though, or most times, it's not a problem.
The leader, Bobby Rahal, number 18, the Craco STP machine, trying to hold up the Personal Investment Group car. That's what PIG stands for. And Ted Krampus, he gets past him. Krampus has been very careful with his car thus far this weekend. And Al Unser Jr. finally makes it around Danny Sullivan and closes up so he can now do battle with Michael Andretti. So the front of the field beginning to close in once again. There is Michael as he tries to get around the 19 car. And Michael will have Al Unser Jr. closing very quickly as well.
Scott Goodyear running very slowly here. We can't see whether he's in trouble or not, but he's running very slowly after his pit stop.
So at the front of the field, Bobby Rahal, 2.1 seconds ahead of Michael Andretti. Al Unser Jr. has some distance to make up, but Michael Andretti is already closing in on Bobby Rahal. He started this race as the pole sitter and gave it away to Al Unser Jr. Then Bobby Rahal took over the lead. We continue to run at Vancouver. Back at Vancouver, looking back from Bobby Rahal's car as he just comes around Scott Pruitt and tries to get away from Michael Andretti, but Michael Andretti is without question on the charge.
On the charge, but Rahal got the advantage of traffic. Look at Michael close right up under his gearbox here. I was about to say Michael really lost about 3 car lengths with the traffic at Scott Pruitt, but look how quickly he makes it up under braking.
I've said it several times this summer. Michael Andretti may be driving better than at any other time in his career. He is without question throwing that car all over the place. And now he is trying to get around Bobby Rahal.
Okay, we're looking back again from Rahal's gearbox. This is the turn 9 and 10 area. This is where we saw Michael close in on Emerson. Now we're back inside with Michael. This is where he's made his moves today. Now Rahal is caught in traffic. He's behind Scott Brayton.
This is where Michael can be so very good, but Rahal is pretty good at it as well. And that is figuring out how to move in and out of this traffic.
Oh, there's a traffic jam. Look at Michael. Closes right up on Rahal.
They both come around Hiro Matsushita. And now slower traffic ahead yet as they come to a very tight corner. Michael looks to the outside. One car very hard on its brakes. Looked to be Scott Brayton. Really slapped him down to get into this corner.
Okay, Rahal's in trouble again. All the traffic problems are going for Rahal, going Rahal's way. Everything at the moment is falling into Michael's hands. Look at that rear view camera.
Boy, Michael searches for any possibility to get around Rahal. Scott Brayton sits just ahead of them in the number 22 Amway car. And now, boy, look at Michael in that Texaco Haviland machine. He's just looking for any opening at all, poking his nose forward. But Rahal, a longtime veteran as well, is not going to be intimidated by this run.
Inches is all he needs. Look, he slides down inside Scott Brayton. Now he's outside Rahal, but Rahal has control of the line. Remember, he can take whatever line he likes, and he will make it as difficult as possible for Michael. Now, this is where Michael was very fast. Earlier with Emerson, he closes right up. Let's see what he does with Rahal. No, he doesn't close up that much.
Quaker State onboard camera looking over Michael Andretti's right shoulder. He does, in fact, under the braking, though, close up on the back of the 18 car of Bobby Rahal. He tries to come off the corner on the inside, but he can't get it done. Now he comes alongside of Rahal.
Oh, he got around the outside again. I can't believe he did that. such a tight left-right chicane.
Well, Michael Andretti now picks up the lead of the race away from Bobby Rahal. So Michael back at the front again, and just that quickly is able to begin to pull away from Bobby Rahal. Now, at this point, Derek, we've had a yellow, full course yellow, some laps. Should fuel be a problem? Should not these guys be able to run as hard as they can? We're going to have a chance to go back and look at that pass here in just a second.
Oh, I hope we can go back. In fact, we will be going back to have a look at it. But I can hardly believe Michael pulled off such a bold and brave move when Rahal was actually moving down to the inside to actually try and block his move. Here it is here. Now, Michael is under acceleration. Rahal is on the inside. Michael says, okay, I'm going to go down the outside. And he makes it. He pulls off a move like that. That does not happen too often. A great move. What an aggressive style shown by Michael all day.
Balancing the car all through that corner. But the question still stands. What do you think is the fuel situation? Does that battle tell us that everybody can race as hard as they want to now?
I would have to say, with the number of yellow flags we had earlier for Willie T. Ribbs' crash incident, I think that has alleviated most of the fuel problems. And remember, Michael started with a high downforce setup, so he needed yellow flags. It was a bit of a gamble, but now he can run fast. Rahal put less rear wing on his car to save fuel, but it also makes him slower on the racetrack. And that's what we're seeing here.
Well, this is the battle for the championship between Bobby Rahal and Michael Andretti. Two entirely different paths. As we take a look first at Bobby Rahal, who has, for the most part, through the early part of the season, been absolutely consistent, though he's fallen off a little bit lately. Now, if we take a look at Michael Andretti, when he finishes very well, but you can see that he has had his problems throughout the year. So he's arrived at this championship point just behind Rahal by an entirely different route.
That's right, and this is a great graph, Paul, because it shows you not only the result, this graph shows you driving styles. It shows you that Rahal is a championship driver. Michael, if he wins the championship, well and good, but he's an all-or-nothing driver. Let me go for the win, or I can fail. That's it. An all-or-nothing driver versus consistency. A great graph that shows driver style.
Scott Goodyear had a spectacular run going. Now he's fallen back in the order, is running 11th. Let's get an update from Gary Gerald.
Well, very simply, we mentioned when he came in for that pit stop that he got out all right. It was a little bit long. There was some fluid. But on the next lap, unfortunately, he found the concrete. Left front wheel, you can see where it broke away on impact. Had to return to the pits, make the change. He's now back on course. But that was a costly one for Scott Goodyear and his team that had such great high hopes.
We mentioned earlier on that it takes about 4 to 6 laps to warm up these tires here. So we saw a situation there where Scott Goodyear did not have enough temperature in his tires. As we watch a replay of, whoa, Mario tries to get down the inside of his nephew, John. John closes the door and says, sorry, no way, Uncle.
Little battle within the family there. So Michael Andretti has the lead here in Vancouver. Last Wednesday, top fuel drag racing driver Gary Ormsby succumbed to cancer. To most, it was a sudden loss, but to those close to him, they knew he'd been fighting it for some time. Gary was 49. He still owns several NHRA records. The U.S. Nationals are in Indianapolis this weekend, where he will be honored. He and his team supported me at a very tough time in my life. I will miss him, as will most of his fans. Michael Andretti is out in front by 0.6 of a second over Bobby Rahal, but the fight very definitely is still at the front of the field. Then Al Unser Jr., John Andretti, Mario Andretti is up, challenging his nephew now. Eddie Cheever, Rick Mears, Danny Sullivan, Scott Brayton, and Scott Pruitt round out the top 10. The fight very definitely at the front of the field, though, as Rahal, you're on board with him now, and that is Michael Andretti just ahead, and just ahead of that, some more traffic to contend with.
And we have a situation here where Michael is again controlling this race. We saw that earlier on, but he caught Rahal so fast, manhandles his way by, and then is content to actually control the pace and just slow down a little bit. Mario Andretti, his dad, makes a pit stop.
So Mario Andretti is there. This is not routine. They brought in because he had a flat tire on the car. But, of course, anytime you bring the car in, as long as you've gone through the trouble of slowing it down, go ahead and do anything else you need to do to it, including refueling the car. So Mario Andretti, who was in a pretty good position, now will come out of the pits in about 9th place.
Yeah,
so that cost him 4 positions real quickly.
He's actually 1 lap down now, because just as we watched him come out, Michael and Rahal flew by.
Boy, look look at the traffic through this corner as Michael Andretti coming up now just behind Emerson Fittipaldi, but a whole bunch of traffic just in front of them, and Ray Hall knows it.
Oh, and the Ray Hall gets caught. Look at this. He's caught behind Tony Bettenhausen. Michael is through the chicane, so Ray Hall loses probably 7 or 8 or maybe 10 car lengths in that one move.
Now Michael Andretti comes up behind Danny Sullivan, and Fittipaldi separates Ray Hall from Michael Andretti. But still some incredibly good drivers there, all cognizant of one another's presence.
Look at Emerson now. I would like to see Emerson move over and let this lead battle get through. Emerson is not in the fight. Yes, he does. He moves aside, lets Ray Hall down the inside. Emerson lost a wing earlier on and then had a stop-and-go penalty, so he is now 1 lap down. But I'm glad to see he lets him by. But look, Paul, in less than a lap, how far away Michael has got because of traffic.
Well, just in that interval of a single lap, Ray Hall was right on top of Michael. Now he's nearly 2.5 seconds back, but again, he's closing in. Again, there is traffic just ahead, and Ray Hall tries to handle it up. Just a reminder, because occasionally you're seeing, like there, loss of signal from the onboard cameras. The onboard camera operates with a signal that is sent from the car up to a helicopter orbiting over the track, and then back down to the television trucks, and then out to you. Well, that signal will not go through grandstand and roadways, and the track here passes under the grandstand and under quite a few different roadways. But personally, I think I'd rather have a little bit of breakup and see those onboard cameras any day.
The onboard camera stuff we've seen today has been so good as Michael slides down the inside of Scott Goodyear to put a lap on Scott Goodyear. Ray Hall tries to do the same thing and gets caught behind Ted Prappus.
So just beyond the halfway point now, Bobby Ray Hall tries to catch up to the leader of the race, Michael Andretti. And he hasn't made much up during that last lap, only about a 10th. He's still 2.5 back from Michael Andretti.
Does manage to close up under braking. We see another car. That's Danny Sullivan, the car right ahead of Bobby Ray Hall. So Michael really has stretched it and used the traffic to his advantage here. That's Scott Goodyear, Danny Sullivan between Andretti and Ray Hall.
Michael Andretti, of course, has re-signed his deal with Newman Haas Racing for another year. His father is signed for another 2 years, so there aren't the kind of worries that he's had this year. We had a chance to talk to Michael about last week's Denver Grand Prix, how it looked when he was totally out of the race and then wound up with a dramatic gain in the point standings. To be able to hear Michael there. We'll try to get back to you. But Michael Andretti still runs in the lead with Ray Hall chasing.
One of the interesting things, I had a little discussion with Michael this weekend about the Formula One McLaren situation. I said to him, well, obviously you would have liked Senna to have left and left a position for you. He said, no. He said, I wanted Berger to lead. I wanted to run against Senna because then when I can run with him, people know how good I am. Such is the confidence of Michael Andretti. I was really pleased to hear him say that.
So let's try it again, because the question to Michael was, how did he feel after last weekend when he had his trouble and still made a good gain in the points?
Well, I'm not proud of that race. You know, I think there's a few mistakes that I did make in it that put me in that position. And, you know, it's just one of those things where you just never give up. Just keep driving and, you know, hope that the effort will pay off. And in this case, it happened to work in my favor.
Well, Michael Andretti at the front of the field. He's completed 1 pit stop in 54 laps in this 100-lap, 167-mile race on the streets of Vancouver, British Columbia. Bobby Ray Hall is second. Al Unser Jr. continues running in 3rd place. In 4th is John Andretti, who finished 5th last year and is having another spectacular ride. 5th place is Eddie Cheever, then Rick Mears, Danny Sullivan, Mario Andretti. 9th place is Scott Pruitt. 10th place is Scott Brayton. Let's go to Gary Gerald.
Quick note here, as Bobby Ray Hall's team lays out for an anticipated pit stop, that early window that we talked about is going to apparently cost this team if there are no yellows the rest of the way. Barry Green just told me we will have to make another stop after the one they're getting ready for right now. So they await Ray Hall, but it looks like he'll have to be in again before his day is over.
So the tactics beginning to show in this battle here at Vancouver. By the way, Maury Frames, who we've mentioned had back surgery earlier in the year, is back with the team. He has been for a couple of races, and he is back sitting in the pits and no doubt looking up the pits right now, watching for this man, his driver of the 18 car, Bobby Ray Hall, as he rolls into a stop. Here's Gary.
Boy, we look at him straight on, Paul, and what a view as you see those familiar colors, the blue and the gold of the Craco Gallows team, and Bobby Rahal leading the championship point chase. We listen to this team in action. Now we see a slight adjustment back inside near the cockpit, back inside of the suspension, and they're holding him up. Now he makes the move. 15 seconds. Interesting, and I'm not sure what that change was. Maybe Derek can address that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, it looked to me is that the right side pod, in fact, we see the little bit of tape that he added on there. It looked like that right top side pod was obviously coming loose a little bit, so it could get worse, but he puts a bit of tape on, and hopefully that will look after the problem.
There's a little fastener there. It's hard to see right now, but you can see the piece of tape, and it's actually what should be an anti-vibration fastener, but it has a bit of a spring in it, and sometimes that spring can cause havoc and keep the fastener out, so if they put tape over it, it'll keep it down.
Right. Keep it down, let him get on with his business at hand, because he has enough to worry about here in Michael Andretti without the car and the bodywork falling off as he drives down the straight.
Watching now as Rick Mears has the leader of the race just behind him, and to show you how fast Michael is, Rick Mears is our 5th place car.
Hard to believe that Mears in a Penske is going to be lapped and he's running in 5th place, but really these Penske cars, I think it's not an unfair comment to say on street circuits in particular, they have not been probably up to the standard that Roger Penske likes, and it really is a bit of a surprise because they probably have more resources to build cars and develop and test cars than any other team up and down the pit lane here. But really that Penske car, although it is superb sometimes on the ovals, struggles a little bit in these race conditions.
As long as I've mentioned it here in this onboard camera shot, as Michael Andretti comes in, you can see that little fastener, a Zeus fastener there. Let's go to Jan Beekes.
Michael Andretti brings it to a stop right on the marks. This team already knows that Rahal had a little bit of trouble, so the heat is off. They're just trying to get the tires on. The question is, will this be Michael's last stop? They're waiting for every bit of fuel, so I would say they're just waiting for all that fuel. Next time, Alexander Jr. goes by us, and he's on his way to Gary Gerald. Gary?
And indeed, the crew anxiously awaits. We see the nose of the car. Looked like he had to hit the brakes hard, but he is right on the marks. The fuel hose intact. Rick Gallows told us no changes on this stop. He says we've just got to haul the mail, although his language is a little more colorful than that. Down off the jacks, waiting for the fueling to be complete. They probably have got one more stop they're going to have to make. But little Al, who won here a year ago, is back on course.
So Al Unser Jr. back into the fight. Michael Andretti back into the fight.
And Bobby Rahal, his teammate, slices by as Al Jr. comes onto this long back stretch here, trying to get up to speed, trying to get some heat into those tires, as Michael Andretti has plenty of heat because he stopped a little bit earlier, and he's still well on his way, well in control.
So the second stop of the day for many of the leaders now complete, but all of them now predicting a third stop, one that in fact may come very close to the end of this run in Vancouver. This track fact is brought to you by Quaker State. The Big Q is one tough motor oil. Here's Gary Gerald.
Every race-ready Indy car has to meet a minimum weight of 1,550 pounds. And where the crews can adjust that weight is found underneath the car, what is known as the bottom skid plate. It's built and designed to protect the undercarriage of the car so that if the car bottoms out on the racing surface, it won't damage the tub. The bottom skid plate is built in 3 pieces. The first piece is down here underneath the nose of the car and the driver's feet. A much larger second section is in here underneath the tub where the driver sits. And then a third piece is located from the back of the driver to the wall where the engine begins. Now here alongside Ari Leyendijk's car, we've laid out some bottom skid plates. This particular type is known as Jabrock. It's a compressed wood that's made in Germany, very durable, but it's also very light. 3 pieces, total bottom skid plate weight, 10 pounds. Many of the teams, however, elect to use aluminum, perhaps more durability, but it weighs more, 25 pounds total for the 3 pieces. But say you take your car to Michigan or a super speedway like Indianapolis, where you use the small wings front and rear to trim out the car. You have carbon fiber brakes. You've dramatically lightened up the entire weight package, but you still have to meet the minimum of 1,550 pounds. Well, there they may use brass, because brass is about 3 times heavier than the aluminum. And 3 pieces of brass underneath the car would weigh just over 70 pounds. Now, some of the teams will mix and match. They may start with aluminum here, they may have Jabrock here, and Jabrock up there. And by adjusting those parcels, they can almost hit that 1,550-pound minimum right on the nose.
It's interesting to note on street circuits in particular that the jab rock or the rubbing blocks are critical because they run these cars literally on the ground sometimes, because the lower you get these cars, the more downforce they make. The more downforce they make, the faster they go. But an interesting point is when they use jab rock at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the speed is so high that the driver can actually smell the wood burning when the car is running too low.
Michael Andretti, he is out in front, 11, now 12 seconds ahead of the second place car. Let's go to Jan Beekes.
Eddie Sheaver, who was running so well, came in and they had to bleed all of the brakes. The brakes got too hot and they had to bleed all the brakes, as I mentioned, which is one of the tasks that takes a very long time. We lost a lot of time here in the pits, but the question is, this is the first time here in Vancouver the sun's really been out and it's got warm. All the front runners are running lowless. Could they also be having a braking problem, Paul?
Well, that's a question we'll certainly have to answer. When you bleed the brakes, what they have to do is get air that is now in the brake line out of the line, and that means opening the brake spigot at every one of the four corners of the car.
That's right. What happens, the brake fluid, it boils. It gets so hot that it boils. And just watching your kettle boil at home, see all the air bubbles? That's what's happened to the fluid. They have to bleed it and actually get all those air bubbles out. Well, speaking of air, here's Michael Andretti with his visor cracked open, getting nice, cool, fresh air inside his helmet. Earlier, we saw him have a...
Oh, two cars. That's John Andretti and Emerson Fittipaldi.
No, this is turn 3, the slowest corner on the racetrack. It's a first-gear corner. It looks to me as if maybe Emerson tried to get in under John because John was the one that actually spun out.
It looks like John is not under power. Fittipaldi already is back rolling.
Yeah, that's right. Here's the replay. Emerson goes down inside, just clips that left rear, the right rear of John Andretti. Emerson's able to keep the engine running, but John, unfortunately, look at Mario just creep around the outside, and Scott Pruitt just enough room to get around the outside. Now, of course, John Andretti is in trouble. There's no onboard starters on these cars, so if the track marshals cannot push him fast enough to start that car, they will have to send a tow truck out to get that car out of the way.
The question I'll have is Fittipaldi as we watch Michael Andretti, the leader of the race, because Fittipaldi looked like he got a pretty good bang on that left front suspension member.
Yeah, and he's already used up a set of wings earlier on today because he lost one earlier in the race. But now, maybe he's done some damage. But look at John. He did get the car started. He is underway, and hopefully not too much damage.
John Andretti fell back to at least 8th position as a result of that confrontation with Emerson Fittipaldi. There's what I suggested. Fittipaldi pointing to the left front. Let's go to Gary Gerald.
And we see the nose come in as he gets stopped now. Let's see if he shuts down the engine. They do not. The crew swarms over it. Emerson now waving and shuts the engine down. He reaches for the helmet. I think Emerson Fittipaldi's championship hopes, and of course hopes of a victory for the second time this year, are done. It would appear to be a broken suspension problem, as you indicated. Emerson should be out of the car shortly.
You can see a most definite bend in the lower control arm there.
Well, we spoke earlier on the difficulty of making a pass on this racetrack. That is one of the hardest braking points where we saw Emerson try to slide down. In fact, we get a good shot there. See the little crack in that wishbone? That's where it actually bent under load, straightened back up again just enough to drive off back to the pits. But that suspension is damaged way too much to continue. But Emerson, a very eventful day here, and his day is now over.
So Emerson Fittipaldi out of the fight. Michael Andretti unchallenged at the moment at the front of the field. Bobby Rahal 11.5 seconds back as the great Brazilian climbs out of his car. Al Unser Jr. runs in 3rd place. Danny Sullivan with Alpha is in 4th place. Mario Andretti up to 5th. Scott Pruitt is 6th. Rick Mears is 7th. Goodyear is 8th. John Andretti is 9th. And Scott Brayton runs in 10th position. You know, Derek, there is so much going on now as we begin to look ahead to the next season. A lot of conversation happening here. We ride with Michael Andretti. Still has that visor cracked open.
And we mentioned earlier, Paul, before you get into what you want to talk about, he had that tear off on the helmet visor earlier on. But you see the little pieces of oil, little oil droplets on that? He got too much on it. He did rip it away. Now he has a clear visor, but he still has it open. Some nice 65-degree fresh air going in under that helmet.
We have suggested earlier in the year that there are going to be a number of new engines, one of them being the Cosworth. And the new Cosworth, apparently, will be going to the Newman-Haas team. So it'll be in the hands hometowns of Mario and Michael Andretti. Also an indication that maybe Eddie Cheever's team, the Ganassi team, will have that Cosworth tower. I mean, there hasn't been a press release anywhere.
No, but the rumor, Paul, has gathered strength incredibly here this weekend.
There are other rumors, but before we go to those, and this one's a good one, let's go to Gary Gerald.
All right, we'll get back to Rumor Central in a moment. Emerson, the contact, was it John Andretti? Was there anything that you could see to try to get out of that situation?
No. It was very difficult. John was just coming out of the pit. He had new tires. Scott, a good deal went through, and I was trying to go through, and I hit him.
I know that there was still a flickering hope that possibly there was a championship for Emerson Fittipaldi this season. It was a long shot. This really wipes out those chances, does it not?
Well, I was very disappointed, Gary, when I lost the front wings when I was behind Michael. I was still running strong. I was doing quick lap times, and I lost the front wing. I said, that's it.
Thank you, Emerson.
Thank you. All right, now there's the center of one of the other rumors, Emerson Fittipaldi and Penske, because apparently Ilmor Engineering, Mario Williams, Paul Morgan, the same guys that built the Ilmor engine that then became the Chevrolet engine, have another engine. And its rights have been sold to General Motors. It probably will be called a Buick engine, and we don't know who's going to have it, except perhaps Paul Tracy.
Or the other Penske cars eventually. I mean, the rumor mill really has been rife this weekend, but when people began to talk about this second-generation Chevrolet engine they talked about first, but now they realize the second-generation IndyCar Ilmor engine may be a Buick.
All right, other action here on ESPN later on today. Major League Baseball, Baltimore at Toronto live. Pittsburgh at San Francisco, and Kansas City at Chicago, all lined up here on ESPN.
It'll be interesting to see, Paul, when this engine announcement is made, because just think about what's going to happen here. Suddenly, most of the field has Chevrolet engines because they're perceived as being the best. Well, if the new Cosworth, the new only available to Penske Buick engine comes out, suddenly the situation we had 4 or 5 years ago starts all over again. There's a better engine, but nobody can have it.
You know, I'm wondering if they should not consider perhaps a rule that says that if you and I build a new engine, the Page Daily engine, if it qualifies today, 3 years from today, we got to be able to sell it to everybody. Perhaps something they should think about.
Well, you know, the rule, for those of you who don't know about Goodyear tires, if a tire company comes in here, they must be prepared to supply half the field immediately. There's one rule for one manufacturer and another rule for another manufacturer.
Michael Andretti, the leader by 9 seconds over Bobby Rahal with 70 of the 100-lap scheduled distance. You know, as long as we're on the rumor circuit, one of the other interesting things was in hearkening back to the past that the new Cosworth engine, well, maybe the licensing on that will be bought by Ford. So you'll have a Ford, a Chevy, a Buick. It'll sound pretty American.
Well, I think nothing better could happen for the IndyCar series than the major manufacturers begin to start do battle against each other on the racetrack. I would love to see Cosworth rejoin with Ford again, because in fact the Ford Cosworth is almost a bit of a synonymous name after that all too famous Formula One V8 engine that they built in the 60s.
Well, it gives us something just simply to whet our appetites, not only for the races ahead, but for the winter season to see what will develop as we watch the third place car, Al Unser Jr. By the way, his team got to test their new Galmer at Big Springs, Texas this week, and Rick Gallis is so excited about this car. Every time you mention it to him, I mean, he's like a little kid. Oh, it's great, it's super. Matter of fact, here's a pretty good standard. They ran 30 straight laps with the car, which is fairly unknown in a brand new car just out of the engineering shop.
That's right. I had a long talk with Alan Murphys about this car, and although he's very cagey as to the amount of information he will give you, I picked up that this car is a good car. They do seem to be very pleased with the running they did with it. Now remember, Al Unser Jr., as we watch here, remember what they started with? A benchmark of a 91 Lola, which was a good car, and they've tried to improve everything in the 91 Lola and incorporate that in the new Galmer car. So really is probably one of the more exciting new ventures that has come to IndyCar racing, and we will watch the progress very closely.
Michael Andretti handling up the McKenzie car, number 15 of Scott Goodyear, who still has a fairly good ride going here in 8th place as we watch from the Quaker State onboard camera. Michael Andretti already rolling up most of the laps in this race. race and picking the point up from that. Coming into this race, he had led 600 laps in this season, or 37.8% of all the laps in the season, but still in second place, and that was the consistency issue, easy enough to say, with Michael Andretti.
You can say Matsushita and you can't say consistency.
Hey, you can't say aluminum. On board of the McKinley
I only
car.
use the Queen's English, aluminium.
So Michael Andretti runs in front. Al Unser Jr. is trying to catch up, as is Bobby Rahal, but they're both some distance back. Rahal is 9 seconds back, and Al Unser Jr. is another 3 seconds back from that.
Good onboard camera stuff here with Scott Goodyear. Their team had an interesting relaxation day earlier this week. Mackenzie people, Jim O'Donnell, flew everybody in one of the seaplanes up to go salmon fishing. And believe it or not, Jim O'Donnell himself caught a 30-pound salmon. So he really was king of the hill on their fishing relaxation day earlier this week.
Vancouver is a magnificent place to visit, though you may not have wanted to be here during the first 2 days of practice. Heavy rains up in this area. In fact, north of here, some roads washed out. But boy, when the sun comes out here, it is so pretty, just as it is today. Let's get an update now on Danny Sullivan, who runs in 4th place. Here's Gary Gerald.
Well, remember early, Danny was one of those that stayed out, and there was that early flurry of pit stops, and many of the front runners came in at laps 15 and 16. Sullivan stayed out. He's made only one stop thus far. They know that he'll have to make a second stop. We anticipated around lap 80. Right now he's in 4th place. But the gamble that they're having here in the Pat Patrick, Jim McGee pit is the fact that those other teams, if it goes green the rest of the way, may have to come in for a splash in the final laps. That could make it very interesting for Danny Sullivan, who's looking for his best finish since joining this Alpha team in Pat Patrick this season.
Remember, too, last year here, Danny Sullivan, I thought, had the race won, but then his team, then the Penske organization, brought him in, surprised everybody, and that gave the win over to Al Unser Jr. Bobby Rahal, the number 18 car, in 2nd place right now, but closing in on Michael Andretti. He's now 7 seconds back. He's made up 2 seconds in the last 3 laps. Michael Andretti, though, is still the leader. Due to time constraints, we now move ahead in our coverage of the Molson Indy Vancouver Grand Prix. Bobby Rahal, the 2nd place car, as the Craco SDP car works its way around the circuit. We'll take a look through the full field. Now, that was at 75 laps. We're actually at the 83rd lap right now. And the tactics of this race have yet to play, because pit stops and fuel loads will most certainly come into question, especially with the leader of the race, Michael Andretti. The Patrick team, of course, was trying to figure out how they could get to the end of this race with only 2 stops, but then they had their problem with the nose cone. But the best estimate is that most of these cars will have to stop yet, and probably very close to the finish. Let's go down to the Michael Andretti pit and Jan Vikas.
You're right, Paul. There still is a question as to whether Michael Andretti will have to come in. They're right borderline right now. But if we take a look at this hose, this is the only fuel that's remaining. It's about 4 gallons of methanol that's left in the hose. If he does have to come in, that's all they have to put in the car, and he'll be back underway. Paul?
But that amount of fuel right there could make the difference.
Well, 4 gallons of fuel is more than 4 laps of racetrack, so that will get him a long, long way. But of course, the big disadvantage is having to actually stop to take the fuel on.
So will Michael Andretti have to make that stop? Or for that matter, Rahal or Al Unser Jr. You're watching the onboard camera, Quaker State on board, looking over Michael Andretti's shoulder, as once again traffic is a situation here. It has been a critical factor throughout the day as Michael tries to engage these different corners so very, very tight, and at the same time deal with cars that are running somewhat slower than he is. Now Bobby Rahal can get a relative indication of the distance back as Rahal heads under the overpass at the stadium.
He's not that far behind. I mean, he's only just over 7 seconds behind, because we see him now almost on the same piece of racetrack that Michael was on 6 or 7 seconds ago. So Rahal not that far behind, but I really think it's because Michael is controlling the pace rather than Rahal dictating to Michael how fast he should go.
Michael Andretti onto the pit straight just behind Rick Mears, who runs in 6th place right now. Michael's father continues to stay in pretty close contact with him, though Mario Andretti is running back in 4th position right now. Michael is definitely controlling this race and continues to do so. A beautiful day here in Vancouver. Look at those nice white clouds, brilliant blue sky overhead, and comfortable temperatures in the 70s. It's a great day for racing, not just for the fans, but for the racing engines. The air perfectly suited for breathing through these 161 cubic inch turbocharged engines.
Michael, as we said, is controlling the race, but the most interesting thing is to watch from the inside what he's doing. Let's just stay with Michael right alongside and listen to his gear changes.
Listen to Michael as he stutters down into some of those corners, but Bobby Rahal is closing in. He's now 6.5 seconds back. Let's get an update on him from Gary Gerald.
And a quick word with Barry Green. We talked to him a moment ago. Paul said, is there any way that you might be able to make this without a final stop? Barry said, no way. We'll have to come in. So those are his words. We'll just wait and see how it plays out. Remember, though, a caution could put a whole different implication on this deal and really get suspenseful to the end.
Well, last year we had 4 full course go-up cautions. Just one this year. Well, there's still the possibility of one, but everybody's driving pretty smooth. I certainly wouldn't anticipate such a thing as Michael Andretti on the pit straight once again. The fastest section of the race course. Does he have this race handled? Ray Hall's crew has indicated they will have to stop. I would guess the same might be true for Little Al. We'll continue to wait and watch. We'll be back. Well, Bobby Rahal is beginning to cut into the lead of Michael Andretti. This is the third place car. Al Unser Jr. Rahal is now 5.5 seconds back from Michael Andretti. You know, it's coming up as a must-win for Nigel Mansell if he wants to stay in the race for the World Driving Championship. Ayrton Senna will be there to challenge at the Grand Prix of Italy. Coverage Sunday morning live at 8:50 Eastern Time here on ESPN. Scott Pruitt, the number 11 car, is in 5th place right now as we follow him around this circuit.
Scott Pruitt in the Judd Parrott car. Now, this car has 2 basic setups, a mono valve or an 8 butterfly fuel injected system. The mono valve produces more power, but it's more difficult to drive. Yet Scott Pruitt prefers that setup, even on a road course as stop and go as this one is. He still says he can overdrive the problems or the difficulty in driving it because he prefers to have more power.
Here's another team that has been a center of some of the conversations of the past several weeks. What will the True Sports team be like for next year? They admit that the engine is not producing the kind of power that they would like to keep them competitive with some of the Chevrolet power plants, but the chassis seems to be so very good. What engine combination may they come up with next year? Any guesses?
Well, I mean, the rumor mill says that there is a possibility that Chevrolet may open up for True Sports, but they are in a bit of a question mark situation. But one thing they do know is this car is basically good if they can get some more development out of it also. But it is good and has shown some good turns of speed already this season.
If this predicts what may happen for Michael Andretti, Mario Andretti just was quickly in and out of the pits. Looked to be just a splash of fuel. There's Mario back on the circuit. Al Unser Jr., the third place car, trying to get around Mario as Mario comes back up to full speed.
Oh, Mario, now he's taking a middle of the road line. I'm surprised. Look at Al Jr. jumps over the curves, very anxious to get past Mario. But Mario giving Al Jr. a bit of trouble he doesn't need right now.
Well, Michael Andretti on the pit straight again continues to stay out now with 10 laps to go in the race. So Michael Andretti about 16 miles to the checkered flag. And here comes Bobby Rahal. Gary Gerald is there.
We watch with the crew. Now we see the nose of the car coming into sight. Critical to hit that mark. He does. The man of such great experience, looking for his second win this year. Gets the spot. He's out of here in 5 seconds.
He rocked Bobby Rahal as he rocked that car into first gear and rolls out of the pits, and Bobby Rahal back into the fight. But he is frustrated by every one of those cars that he sees flash past. because he knows that they are cars that he will have to pass if he wants to get to the front of the field. But now, what about Michael Andretti? Jan Bikas, any new information?
Michael Andretti, the whole crew here very anxiously look down and watch the pit stop of Rahal. They will not have to come in until the very end, and if there's a yellow flag, they might not have to come in at all. They're praying that maybe there's a full course yellow, but then on the other hand, with a lead like that, maybe you wouldn't want a full course yellow. Paul?
But what you're suggesting, Jan Bikas, is that there is a very real possibility that Michael may have to hit the pits.
He will hit the pits if it stays green the whole time. He will be in for a splash and go. He can't make it without that 4 gallons that I showed you earlier.
Okay, Jan, do not move. Stay right there. 8 laps to go for Michael Andretti. Bobby Rahal sits in second. Al Unser Jr. is in third place. But the leader of the race may have to stop. And if he does, he may give the lead up to Bobby Rahal. Back in Vancouver and on board with Bobby Rahal in the Quaker State onboard camera as he tries to do battle to catch up to Al Unser Jr., who sits just ahead of him on the circuit. The question now becomes one of what will Michael Andretti and little Al do? Al Unser Jr. is now in second place ahead of Rahal. Michael Andretti, Jan Bikas has reported if they go green all the way to the finish, just 7 laps from now, will have to stop and refuel. On the other hand, what does Al Unser Jr. do? He has made one more stop than everyone else, owing to a stop and go. And in doing that stop, has picked up just a little bit extra fuel. So the tactics of this race are now being played, and played very well. Al Unser Jr. in second, Rahal in third place, Mario Andretti in fourth place, Scott Pruitt in fifth, Rick Mears is sixth, John Andretti seventh, Scott Goodyear eighth, ninth is Danny Sullivan, Scott Brayton is 10th, Eddie Keever 11th, Jeff Andretti is 12th, Ross Bentley, a local driver from here in Vancouver in his second ride in the Indy cars, is 13th, then Ted Prappas sits 14th, another Canadian, John Jones, is 15th place, and Hiro Matsushita rides in 16th place. Those are the cars running at this moment. But the question and the focus remains on this man, Michael Andretti.
And this poker game that they play with fuel mileage is a very, very dangerous game to play because, remember, they're reading the telemetry and some of the computer readouts that this car gives. They have been known to be wrong in the past, so it's a very dangerous game to play when you're trying or you're hoping that there's a couple of gallons left just to get that last couple of miles, because as we said earlier, it is so costly in time to have to stop in the pit lane.
You know, the routes of communication, especially with this team, the Newman-Haas team, are excellent. They will tell you everything that goes on, as they did Jan Bikas. There his crew stands ready to give him a splash of fuel. Maybe in some occasions they're actually too open, too honest about it. With 6 laps to go, here is Michael Andretti. We know what the game plan is, which means that everybody else does. Here comes Michael in, and Jan is there.
Here it comes, right here. This could be the most in Indy of Vancouver right here. Let's see how long it takes to get the 4 gallons of fuel. Let's hope he doesn't have that problem with the engine. He's sliced at the tires, 5.6 seconds. He's out of here.
Michael Andretti screaming on the pit road now as he comes out of the pits, and Michael Andretti appears to have maintained the lead without any problem whatsoever. Gary Gerald, let's get an update.
Well, now we've seen the die cast from one end of the pits. Now we'll see how the Unser team reacts. Rick Gallus said, Gary, I'm getting too old to gamble. He said there was a possibility, but he was really wanting to see what Andretti was going to do. Now they know the team is getting ready to go over the wall. I think we'll see Junior for a splash in a moment.
So Al Unser Jr., there he is. He runs in second place. But will he come in as well? We'll know in just a moment for the finish of the Vancouver Grand Prix. The other question mark of the day, it's Al Unser Jr. He runs in second place, 14 seconds behind Michael Andretti. Bobby Rahal sits 2 seconds back from his teammate, little Al. Michael Andretti, in these closing laps now with just 4 to go, appears to have this race sewn up, but here comes Al Unser Jr. now into the pits. Michael Andretti, the number 2, Kmart, Haviland, Lola. Well, it's got all its fuel, but what about this car? Here's Gary Gerald.
And just like his teammate before him, he's right on the mark. The man who has been the master of this temporary circuits, 14 wins on such circuits, is out of here in 6 and a fraction seconds on our clock.
So the splash of fuel there. Now everyone runs to the finish. And if the race were over at this moment, Bobby Rahal would finish it with 157 points. Michael Andretti would be just 3 back with 154, and Al Unser Jr. with 143. So with a great race, we still have no decisions at all being made in this points fight.
Well, that's right, and Rahal has led this championship for so long, but if anybody is going to take it away from him, and I'm not saying give it to Michael Andretti, he is literally going to forcibly, physically take it away from Rahal through sheer speed. This is the man who has the best chance, I think, of taking the possibility of Rahal not winning the championship.
Michael Andretti across the line again now with just 3 laps to go. Can he hold on to the end? That should have been sufficient fuel to make it to the end of the race for him, but fuel is still a question, and this tight circuit on which anything can happen can also be a question mark. Michael Andretti has 15 seconds ahead of Bobby Rahal now. Al Unser Jr. came out of the pits into 3rd position with that quick splash for the Unser Jr. car, but of course that gave good position to the Gallus-Craco operation. It was probably an excellent judgment by Rick Gallus.
Well, it really was. Now, we watched Al Jr. take 6 seconds. Michael took something like 5.7. That's the time they're actually stopped on the pit road, but it takes about 15 seconds to stop the car, and it takes another 15 seconds to accelerate the car from a standstill. So a pit stop, if it's only 4 seconds, in fact takes about 34 seconds of actual track time.
So there's Michael Andretti with now 2 laps to go. The white flag should come out from Nick Venoro's hand in the next lap.
For those of you who saw that big advertising poster, Michael and his dad looking down on the racetrack here, big smiles on their face. Michael will have a big smile on his face because the only thing that can rob him now is a mechanical failure or a mistake, because if he hits one of those concrete barriers that we see lining the racetrack here, they weigh 7,000 pounds of concrete. Each of those barriers, and there's 2,000 of them around this racetrack, they destroy race cars very quickly.
Well, if Michael Andretti can see it all the way to the checkered flag, this will be his 19th career IndyCar victory. That'll put him in 14th place on the all-time list, tied with the great Jimmy Bryan. So we watch now for the white flag from the start-finish line, indicating 1 lap to go for Michael Andretti. Bobby Rahal and Al Unser Jr. in a pretty close fight just behind. And the Gallus-Craco team fighting among themselves. There's the white flag, and Michael Andretti has a little under 1.5 miles to go to victory. If so, too, it will be the 5th victory this year for Michael, far more than any other. But Michael is going to need some good, solid, consistent finishes in the remaining 4 races of this year if he wants to see his first PPG Cup championship. He very possibly will see it this year.
You know, sometimes when you win a championship, things have a habit of falling your way. And I would say Denver, this year, there's another one of those posters of the 200. He's looking down on the racetrack. Denver last week is probably one of the first times things began to go Michael's way. He probably had no business finishing 3rd after all the incidents he had in the race, yet he came through, got the points, began to roll his way.
They're playing it so very careful in the Newman Haas pits because they're still not sure. But here comes Michael past the pit entrance and onto the pit straight. Michael Andretti now can see the checkered flag line just ahead. And Michael Andretti has won at Vancouver, and he's won 5 of the last 9 IndyCar races. So they celebrate now at Newman Haas. Bobby Rahal should be screaming for the line and take 2nd place. Al Unser Jr. will head down for 3rd position. Unofficially in 4th place, it will be Mario Andretti. So the Newman Haas team with 2 finishes in the top 5, and it seemed that little Al slowed down somewhat as they came across the line. So fuel must have been very, very close for everyone here. Carl Haas acknowledges the congratulations of the Newman Haas team. They have done a superlative job here today for themselves and for Michael Andretti. Tom Wirtz, the crew chief, takes home the victory laurels there as the chief. And that whole crew has to be very happy with that. That's a warm, wonderful moment for a team.
It really is. What a job well done. This race had everything. It had speed. It had people in position to control the race. It had yellow flags. It had stop and goes. It had fuel problems. And yet, Michael already comes through with all that and basically, I think, dominates because we didn't see him at the front all the time. We saw him, what, in about 10th position one time after that full course yellow. Look at Al Unser Jr.
I thought he might be out on the
Yeah, we saw him weave around. In fact, right after he took that checkered flag, and doesn't even get all the way around. So the visor comes up, takes some fresh air, and waits for a tow truck to come and take him back to the pit lane.
All right, Jan Beekes is now with the car owner, Carl Haas.
Well, Carl, I haven't seen you smile that much in such a long time. You're jumping on top of the pit wall. What a great day for you.
Well, you know, we had a screw up in the pit early on, and that put Michael way behind, but he drove fantastic. And of course, the rest of the race, what we were really sweating at was the fuel mileage. We thought we were okay, but kind of playing it close, and of course we took a quick splash with what little we had left in the tank, but we were okay. We were all right. He did a great job. Great drive, great crew.
Well, congratulations, Carl. Everybody in Newman Haas is very happy here. Paul?
Oh, Carl, look at him. He's not going to give it up.
He's not finished yet.
Al Unser Jr. stopped dead on the circuit. Finishes unofficially in 3rd place here. His teammate Bobby Rahal just ahead of him in 2nd position. And Carl Haas should recognize that Mario Andretti has finished in 4th place. Let's go back into the race itself and take a look. This was when Michael was trying so desperately to get around Rahal.
This is a great picture from the back of Rahal's gearbox. Just look at how close Michael gets exiting the corner. This is where he builds up his speed. Now watch, Rahal moves to the inside, down inside, so Michael says, okay, I'm going outside. And incredibly, he got outside, was able to make the brakes, get on the brakes late and get outside Rahal in a right left-hand chicane like this. I mean, I'm really surprised he pulled off that move, but that may be a hint of what we said earlier on. When it's your championship, things have a habit of going your way.
So Michael Andretti scores the victory, but still very uncertain who will be receiving the PPG Cup, the symbol of the championship, from the hands of Jim Chapman. By the way, the all-round season dinner will be held in Houston, Texas this year on the 5th of November, and there may be some other interesting announcements by that time. Now, we'll be following here on ESPN the coverage all the way to determine that championship. Here are the dates of the telecast upcoming. Now with not only the 4 races in the series left, but the Marlboro Challenge, which is the best of the best. You've raced in that, and that's a big moment.
That is the all-star race that everybody wants to get into here. It's the points battle leaders as well as the winners.
So Michael Andretti has taken the win in Vancouver, followed by Bobby Rahal and Al Unser Jr. We'll be back to talk with him. Is going to go down, I think, Derek Daly, to the last race at Laguna Seca.
I think it could. I think the passes that we saw Michael put on Rahal and Fittipaldi is the difference that he has over everybody else at this moment.
So we go next to the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, and then on to Nazareth, Pennsylvania, distorted oval, and then we finish the season at Laguna Seca, California. Some great courses that truly challenge the drivers of the IndyCar. Paul Page with Derek Daly, Jan Bikas, and Gary Gerald. So long from Vancouver.